fire, the refiner. Oh, if the altar's where you need us, take me there, take me there. What you need is just an offering. It's right here, my life is here, and I'll be a living sacrifice for you. You're refined, the refined. I wanna be consumed, I wanna be tried by fire. Purified, you take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life. I wanna be tried by fire. Purified, you take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life. Yeah. If your glory wants to come, let it fall. We want it all. Your fire is consuming. Fill this place, set it ablaze, and I'll be a living sacrifice for you. You'll be fine, you'll be fine. I wanna be tried by fire. Purified, you take whatever you desire. Lord, it's my life. I wanna be tried by fire. Purified, you take whatever you desire. Lord, it's my life. So clean my hands, purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, only for you. Oh, take my life as a sacrifice. I wanna burn for you, yeah. Only for you. Oh, clean my hands, purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, hey. Only for you. Take my life as a sacrifice. I wanna burn for you, only for you. Clean my head, purify my heart. 'Cause I wanna burn for you, only for you. Take my life as a sacrifice. I wanna burn for you, only you. Clean my hands, purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, only for you. Say what I give it over. Clean fires, 'cause I wanna burn for you, only. 'Cause you refine, refine. I wanna be consumed. Sing that again. You refine, refine. I wanna be consumed. Say it one more time. You're refine, refine. I wanna be consumed. I wanna be tried by fire. Purify. You take whatever. I need you. You take whatever you need. Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing tonight? I am so excited that you guys have come on and joined the conversation tonight. I am excited about what I'm going to share with you tonight. It's very emotional to me. And so I just wanted to start with to start tonight our session. I was going to say, as if we're in therapy sessions. Um, but I wanted to start our session tonight in addressing with just a little bit of worship. There's this incredible, beautiful song by Maverick City Music, Refiner. I just love that song. It's so beautiful, so powerful. And so I wanted to start a little bit our conversation tonight. Um, there are people that are streaming from we're streaming tonight from my Facebook, the ministry's Facebook, Sandra Garson Digeville, and we're also streaming from YouTube. And so thank you guys for all of you guys who are coming from all of the different streaming platforms. Thank you for joining tonight. I'm so blessed to have you guys. Welcome, Kashina, welcome. Welcome, Fabiola. Welcome, Eugene. Welcome. I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tonight we're going to discuss the issue of trauma. And we're going to be discussing a little bit different because we're going to be discussing it through the perspective of the soul. So I hope you guys had a wonderful week or wonderful couple weeks. Some of you guys that are here tonight, I haven't seen you for a little bit. So thank you for coming in tonight. Definitely share this live and invite someone into this conversation. There is someone that you know that have gone through trauma and have gone through a very difficulty in their life. And they're dealing with challenges and difficulties, and they may not understand why they're going through what they're going through. But tonight may bring some light into some of the difficulties that they're experiencing. So definitely, please share the live. Please share the live and join in this conversation. I hope you guys get involved in the conversation tonight. On Sunday, this past Sunday, I had the privilege to minister at Restoration Community Church in Brockton. So Pastor Pastor Manny Daphne church in Brockton, he invited me to come and share a word to his congregation. He had been working on a subject entitled, what do you call it? Rejection. So dealing with the spirit of rejection. And so through that, he invited me to come and share my testimony. Some of you guys may be familiar with my testimony. Others of you guys may not be familiar with my testimony. And so I wanted to start off by sharing a little bit about my testimony with you guys. And then we can get into our conversation tonight, where we're dealing with how trauma affects the soul. So what we're discussing tonight was some of the things that I shared with them on yesterday, as a matter of fact, at the church. And it was such a blessing that people were able to really gain something from my story. And that is the most beautiful thing about our stories. We may have gone through a lot of challenges in life, but the beautiful thing about it is that our stories are not for nothing. Someone is able to come and glean from our life and see the things that we have gone through, and they are encouraged because we are here and we are sharing our story. And so your story is so powerful and so important. And I don't want you to let anybody make you feel that your story is not important, that your story is not valuable, but because your story is absolutely important and absolutely valuable. And so honor your story. Don't let shame, guilt,
make you feel like your story is not worthy to be shared. There is somebody whose life is in the balance and they're needing to hear your story. My story may be fine, but your story is needed. And so don't despise your story. Don't despise what you've been through, the difficulties, the challenges that you have gone through in your life. Do not despise those, because God is so faithful to use those to empower you and also to empower someone else. And so so definitely share this as you guys are coming on. Share this live because someone needs to hear the things that we're going to talk about tonight so that they can move to the next place in their life. Okay, so I will start with by sharing a little bit about my testimony. For those of you guys who know a little bit about me, this will be very familiar for you. And there are those of you guys who don't know me at all, and that's fine. You're gonna get to know a little bit about my story. So I was born in Haiti, and both my parents had left Haiti by the time I was maybe 5 or 4 years old, around that time. And so I was left in the care of my aunt, and my grandmother, but mostly my aunt. And so by the age I was of 7, I was raped by a family friend. And a year later, I moved at 8 years old. I moved here to Massachusetts, to live with my mom, my stepmother, and my father. And so this was the first time of me really getting to know my father, because while I heard he was there before, I really did not remember him. And so coming to here, hi, Evelyn, how are you? Welcome, welcome. And so coming here to the US was a huge challenge, a huge culture shock for me because, right now it may be popular to be a Haitian, but by the time when I came to the US, it was not popular to be a Haitian at all. And so, they used to have this saying or expression called Haitian body odor, where they were making fun of Haitians. They made fun of me because I didn't speak English, because I didn't understand a lot of the ways, and everything was so new to me. And that was very challenging. And so, after a few months of school, it was around wintertime, and I did come around wintertime too, which was a huge culture shock. Um, because coming from Haiti in a tropical island where it's nice and beautiful, then you're coming here and it's freezing cold. Oh my God, it's insane. And so, a few months later, I went to visit my mom in New York, who was living in New York at that time. And then we went to Florida. We ended up going to Florida. I was supposed to come back to Boston to my dad, and I didn't see him for years after that. For many years after that, the joke was that my mother kidnapped me, and so it took me to Florida. While I was in Florida, we kind of bounced around for a little while until we were able to find our own space. And while we were bouncing around at one of the ladies' home where I stayed, I was violated by her boyfriend and molested again. So, that caused, well, starting with the fact that my parents had abandoned me. So while for them they left me in Haiti to come and look for a better life, for a kid, that's abandonment. Because where are you? You're my parents, and why are you not here to take care of me? Why is it someone else that's taking care of me? You know, and so that abandonment, made a way for the spirit of rejection to come into my life. And that caused a spirit of lust because I was violated. That spirit, that rejection made me susceptible to predators that came and violated me at such a young age. And so, and that turned into anger, just promiscuity in my life, and just feeling self hatred, not knowing how to love myself because I didn't have a good example. I even remember in my relationship with my mom, that was a bit strenuous. And part of why it was so strenuous is that, well, first of all, my mom is this very beautiful woman, physically very beautiful, had always been. And I heard people all the time complimenting her and saying how beautiful and she looks. And yet, you know, as a young girl wanting to feel beautiful too. I was very proud of that. and would be proud to tell people, hey, that's my mom. And people will tell me, nope, that is not your mom. There's no way she can be your mom because you don't look nothing like her. You look like your father. And so this idea of wanting to be beautiful like her, people without thinking told me, nope, you do not look anything like her. So while she was judged, viewed as beautiful, and me wanting to, and that's my mom and wanting to feel beautiful too, what they said to me was that, no, you do not look anything like her. And so in my mind, what they were saying to me is that I did not look beautiful. Instead they said I look more like my father or that I should have been a boy. And saying something like that to a young girl is very detrimental, especially someone who had been violated and harmed and abused. You feel less than, you know? And so, after that, just continued self-esteem issues that happened, and issues between us just kind of became more strenuous, and we had more challenges and more difficulty because people had now put us against one another. And so I remember by the time I was 13, um, my mom pushed me into Jehovah's Witnesses, and I became a Jehovah's Witness. And for me, being a Jehovah's Witness was a refuge because of the strictness of Jehovah's Witnesses. It kind of put a pause in my promiscuous behavior and my self-defeating behavior. And so I so have a heart for women. Sometimes you have a woman that is promiscuous, and people are judging her, calling her a hoe or this or that, and all of these different things. And yet, what people don't understand, one of the major, major symptoms of trauma, especially sexual trauma, is promiscuity. And so while this young woman is out there, with this guy, that guy, and this other guy, and people are looking at her like, why are you so fast? Whereas the reality is she is broken. She's broken. She's been violated and harmed in a way that's almost unspeakable, and wanting to be loved. And so when some guy gives her attention, naturally, have you ever been hungry, like starving or craving something, like, and you come in your house, like maybe you're great craving steak or something, and there's no steak at the house, and then so you go through all the drawers, you're eating chips, you're eating this, you're eating that, you're trying this, you're trying that, all of these different things, and then all of a sudden you're so full and just like, ugh, and yet you still craving the steak because you didn't get the steak. So you went, because you didn't get the thing that you were craving, you went and you ate everything that was in sight. It is that way too when you deal with trauma, sexual trauma especially. So when that violation happens, there is a vulnerability that ends up happening for this woman or this person. They've been exposed, uncovered, and they're looking for covering and for protection. And so anyone that smiles at them, makes them feel welcome or valuable, they're running to that. Because while that is false covering, it is still covering. While it's cold outside in New England, it's cold right now. And so having a jacket that has some holes in it, you would think, oh my, why do you have a jacket that has holes? That's not going to protect you. True. But having zero jacket is worse. And so even though some of these attentions, they're not very healthy, they don't benefit the young woman, they give her a negative reputation. In her mind, in the brokenness of her mind, a jacket that has holes in it in winter is still better than zero jacket, And so, as I had became a Jehovah's Witness and got baptized and got serious into Jehovah's Witnesses, and things were working pretty well for me. And then I fell into old habits. And in falling into old promiscuous habits, I just felt so broken and so lost because I thought that was something that I really had gotten a handle on, but clearly I didn't. And so I remember going to the elders of the Kingdom Hall and letting them know what I was struggling with and what I was dealing with, and hoping that they were going to now be covering for me and say, wow, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Those are the challenges that you're dealing with. We're going to pray for you. We're going to help you through this process. And that's not what happened. Instead, what happened is that they set me down. Hi, Greg, welcome, welcome. And hi, Juan, welcome. And so they set me down from ministry, and I was just sitting there um, for like about a year. And then after a while, I was like, you know what, bump this. This is insane. They didn't help me at all. Instead, they just set me, I was just like in this, like a long, long, long timeout, so to speak. And it's kind of like they forgot they put me on timeout. And so I was getting ready to go to college, and I was like, bump this. I'm going to college and forget all this. And I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to club. I'm going to do all these different things. And so I did go to school to do that. And I was doing those things in school. And so, oh, welcome, welcome. And so so my first year at FAU, I was just partying all day long, all night long. And I paid for it by flunking my first semester in college. And I was like, oh my goodness, I got to wake up and do something because I can't be put out of school. And so, in the following semester, the following semester, I kind of got my act better, a little bit better. And then that following semester, so my sophomore year, a friend of mine had introduced me to this guy. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm finally getting a boyfriend. And so I got into this relationship with this guy, and we moved in together. And it was such an emotionally abusive relationship that really, because I started this process with low self-esteem, broken, lost, confused, because at 7 years old I was raped, and at 9 years old I was sexually molested by another family friend. And so I have these history of trauma, and I've had these unhealthy relationships with my mom because we clash so much because of my own hurt and trauma, and also of her hurt and trauma that was not dealt with herself. And so it just created problems among us. And so now I'm in this relationship with this guy, and it's unhealthy. And when I finally had an opportunity to say something to him, he just blew up and cussed me out. And so I felt again abandoned. Here is another person that came into my life that was supposed to care for me, who said they cared for me, and what they did was use and abuse me. And so, and that just kind of, I fell into such a deep depression, and not going to class, and not getting involved in things. And I remember towards the end of the semester, I got a letter from FAU saying that, because my grades had dropped so low, that if I didn't bring my grades up, so I was going into the summer vacation. And if by the time when I got back in summer and I didn't bring my grades up, they would have kicked me out of school. And so at that point, I was just like, forget it. I just can't. And so I wanted to take my life. That summer, I went home. My main goal was to take my life. And so the night before I had planned on taking my life, I got a call from Jehovah's Witness friends that had left Jehovah's Witnesses. They had became Christians, and they told me God told them to pray for me. And I really wasn't interested, but they're like, you better come. And so I went over there, and as Renee and her mom was praying for me, I was just sitting there having this conversation, this argument with God in my head. And I was letting God know, look at all the trauma and all the pain and all the things that I have gone through. If you really love me, you would just let me die, because there is no hope and there is no future for me. And so without anyone touching me, I just fell on the ground and just began to cry and cry and cry out. And it felt like everything that had ever hurt me just began to pour out in me. And so as I was down there, I felt God wrapped his arms around me. And the best way I know how to describe that is if you ever taken a comforter out of the dryer, and as soon as you took out the comforter, you wrap it around yourself, and all that consuming heat, I felt all of that and just felt the peace of God. Scripture says he gives us peace that passes all understanding, and I experienced that. A pastor didn't tell me that. I experienced that because I felt the peace of God. And at that moment, I knew everything was going to be okay. Even though I didn't know what all was going to be okay, I knew everything was going to be okay. And I felt the love of God. And I gave my life to Christ that day. And honestly, my life has never, never, ever, ever been the same ever, ever again. And so, even though I've had some challenges and some difficult and and I've cried a lot over the years because of pain, because of trauma, other types of trauma that has happened to me. But God has been faithful to me, and has just been so incredibly awesome and wonderful. And I don't know if any of you guys that are watching, if you guys believe in God, if you have given your life to Christ, let me tell you, 19 years ago, if it wasn't for Christ, and I have to say Christ because it wasn't Muhammad Ali, it wasn't Buddha, it wasn't any of these other gods that came to my rescue, because I had finally had mustered up the nerve to take my life. I was prepared to take my life. And in the nick of time, God intervened and he stepped in and he saved me and he showed me his love. And so I know Jesus to be real for me. I know that he, the same way I know I can see me, I can touch me, I can feel me, I'm tangible to me. I know he is that real and that tangible, because if it was not for him, we would not be sitting here tonight talking, because I would not have been alive. I would not have been alive. But I'm alive because there's a purpose and a plan for my life. There's a plan and a purpose for my life. There is people who's been hurt and broken, that needs to hear my story, that needs to hear that that God is real and he loves you. And God is no respecter of persons. When the scripture says he's no respecter of persons, what he's saying is this: listen, what he did for Sandra, he is eager to do for you. That I didn't hit no level and I reached up high and then all of a sudden I've arrived somewhere. I am like you. I am still work in progress. I am still work in progress. I'm daily working. Scripture says daily work out your salvation with fear and trembling. So I'm daily working to improve Sandra to a better version of Sandra. The Sandra I was yesterday, my goal today is to be a better version of me. And tomorrow will be a better version of this Sandra that's in front of you. So I continue to be a work in progress. And God continues to love me, continues to use me, continues to empower me. And so that is so important. And I'm so grateful for the love of God. And yes, I gave my life to Christ 19 years ago. But these last 19 years have not been a holified 19 years. Okay. It has not been this holier than thou kind of situation. But I have fallen in sin over and over and over and over and over. And just to where I was just like, to where my sin just kind of discouraged me, because I'm like, okay, Sandra, this is too much. You got to do something different here, And so God had been faithful and patient with me and has worked with me. And he will do the same for you too, because he is no respecter of persons. And so, so again, even though I had given my life to Christ, and God was using me to minister and be a blessing to other people, I was still struggling with sin. Sin was still a stronghold in my life. And that came a lot out of the trauma that I went through. And so as I've shared just a little bit about my testimony with you, that's just a portion of my testimony. There's so much more to share. We'd be here all night long if I were to share all of it and share the faithfulness of God. but I wanted to move into our topic tonight. So if you're here tonight, um, please, please, please share this live with someone, because somebody needs to hear the testimony. Somebody needs to hear this next piece that we're going into, because we're going to address how trauma affects our soul. And so, so let's get into this. And so, even when you're dealing with rejection, right? And so rejection as a stronghold. So when you think about the word stronghold, those poles in houses or buildings, like the I don't know what you call them, but they hold up the structure. Those little poles in the middle of you see them oftentimes. You see them in houses, and you see them in buildings, especially because they hold up um, the building. Um, what do you say? There's there's so much power in what you shared. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, and so these poles, they hold up pillars. There you go. See, thank you, Kashana. Thank you for sharing that. Pillars, the pillars in the building. So strongholds serve as pillars in our lives. So when a sin happened, whether it was your sin or was it a sin that happened in your family line, it began to set up these pillars, and this and scripture calls them strongholds. And so when these are established in our lives, just like a pillar, it's there to hold everything in place. And so when we have strongholds or pillars in our lives, it's there to hold up the sin in place. It's not there to deliver us and make our lives better. It's there to hold the sins that are in our lives in place so that we can remain bound. And so that is not the will and the purpose of God for our life. He came that we might have life and life more abundantly. And so that first life is salvation. That second life is about the choices and the decisions that we make. No, we cannot always stop a traumatic experience from happening to us, but we certainly can. Our behavior, our reaction, the work, the decisions that we make can change that trauma's ability to hinder us. And instead of it hindering us, we can use it to help propel us. So when my trauma happened to me, for many, many, many years in my life, it held me from functioning and operating the way I should. It hindered me from healing, to fully receiving the healing of God. And so now, as I've gotten older, as I've done a lot of work, a lot of healing work, not that I've completed and I've arrived, I'm still work in progress. Again, all of us are work in progress. I'm able to now use my story to help propel me and also to break people free from what they are. There was a time in my life, there was absolutely no way that I would share that I was that I was sexually violated when I was young. Would never share that, because there was just too much shame and too much guilt around that, and just the feelings of dirtiness and uncleanness that I felt. So I would never share that. But today I can freely share it, because it no longer has the hold it held on me. So now it is a tool that I use to continue healing, and it is a tool that I use to help set people free from similar issues. All right. Okay. So when we even look at the word rejection, and I want to address rejection a little bit, because rejection is such a powerful thing. And so and the reason why, so rejection is such a humongous stronghold. And the reason why rejection is such a huge stronghold in our life, can be a huge stronghold in our life, is because it is the enemy's agenda to deceive us and make us believe in the possibility that we are no longer loved or valued by God, that somehow God has rejected us because of the sin we have done, whatever that sin may be. The enemy's job is trying to convince us that because of that sin, you're disgusting to God now. God no longer wants you. And that is the furthest thing away because the enemy uses rejection because he was rejected. So the enemy sinned and God rejected him. Adam and Eve sinned. So men, humans, we sin. God created a redemption plan for us. And so the enemy's like, wait a minute, whoa. So God, I sinned and you rejected and threw me away. And men, the one you made out of dust, out of dirt, that are nothing, you made them and they sinned and they didn't even take responsibility. Because Adam was like, God, it wasn't me, it was Eve. And Eve was like, God, it wasn't me, it was a serpent. And so neither Adam or Eve took responsibility. They sinned against God, yet God, in his love for humans, in his love for us, created a redemption plan for our lives. The enemy, he straight rejected. And so it is the enemy's goal to make sure we feel the same. And so rejection becomes the thread through all of our experiences, all of our painful experiences, our broken experiences, all of our traumas. Rejection is sewn into all of that. And so we want to be mindful about the stronghold of rejection, because if we can take rejection down, that stronghold down, all the other strongholds, they fall down too, because they're not as strong without rejection being the centerpiece. And so here are the synonyms of rejection: refusal, non-acceptance, declining, dismissal, abandonment, forsaking, desertion, shutting out, exclusion, shunning, cold shouldering, ostracizing, blackballing, avoidance, ignoring, snubbing. All of these things are synonyms of rejection. And that is what the enemy does. And he uses our experiences, our pain, and our traumas to make us feel that we are abandoned, that we've been deserted by God, that we're excluded, we're shunned, that we're not clean enough, we're not good enough, we'll never make it, like we're not enough. Like God, and he'll use too, because I remember several years ago, back in 2000, I would say 2012, 13, 14, about 2014, there was this guy I had met, and that was way before my husband. And so and he was a pastor. And so I was at a particular place, I had a nonprofit organization at that time that I had started. And so there was this pastor that, I kind of had like this pastor, and so had this little sideline crush on him. And so I was just, and then we talked from time to time, and he prayed for me, and we were just friends. It wasn't like he was like, oh, I'm interested in you, Sandra, and things like that. Well, at the time. And so here I was very interested in this man. And because he was a pastor, the enemy would constantly be like, seriously, Sandra, you interested in a pastor? You think you qualified to be a first lady? Like, you would never be a first lady. You could never be a first lady. You don't even have the character. You don't have this. You don't have that. And all of these thoughts, these negative thoughts that told me that this man is above my pay grade, that I was not worthy, that I was not enough. And then I would say maybe either last year or 2 years ago or last year. I think it's like early last year, if I'm not mistaken, about a year and a half. I was driving down the street and I seen this guy walking, And I was like, wait a minute, is that Pastor so and so? And so I pulled over just to kind of get a better look. And it was the pastor. I don't know what happened in his life, but he looked like he was on drugs. And I pulled down, I was like, hey, Pastor so and so. And then he was like, oh, Sister Sandra. And then he went on talking, and he was ministering. He had his own church. He was ministering then, and so, and he was like, so I was like, hey, how are you? He's like, oh, I'm doing so good. And he was just talking like so fast and just like here, there, and everywhere. I was like, you know what I'm saying? I had the church, and I had to leave that church because they didn't believe in me, and my anointing was too high. And I was just like dumbfounded and heartbroken. So heartbroken for this man. And he was like, hey, what's good with you now? I know you used to like me. What's good? And I was like, oh, I'm married. Sorry, thank you. So, but not to lie, I was like, no, I don't know what this is. I don't want it. No devil. I don't want it. But I was so heartbroken still for this man because he was a vessel that God was using. And I remember even when I had my nonprofit organization, I would invite him to speak to our youth. And he was out in the community speaking to the youth and just empowering them. And yet I have no idea what happened, but his life was just like hijacked and just like, I don't know. But so the same enemy that had made me feel I was so unworthy for someone of that status, it is that same enemy that twisted up his life and chewed him out and made him look like he was on drugs and walking the street like he needed to be put in a hospital. So you see how deceitful the enemy is? That he might have you looking at someone else and feeling like you're way below this person. You could never be on their level. You're worthless. You're this, you're that. And then he's making you look at this person and you're feeling all of this because the person may be doing something really great that, you think is so awesome. And, some of you may be listening and then the enemy's like, oh, look at God. Look how God is using Sandra. And, she's building people and empowering people. And look at you, what happened to you, and make you feel terrible. And it's that same enemy, after he trying to convince you that you're no good, he goes to that same person, convince them that here's another person that's above you, and even can sometimes like use the same two people to make us feel like we are unworthy. And it's the same enemy that's lying to us because his goal is to make us feel rejected, to feel the pain of rejection because he was rejected. And so this is how he manipulates us within our souls. So now there's 5 parts of the soul. And so I wanted to go through these 5 parts and talk about how trauma affects these 5 parts. So if you guys are watching with me tonight, if this is a blessing to you, give me some thumbs up, some hearts. If you're learning or getting something out of this, please, please, please share this with someone. Tag someone in this that needs to hear this, that may need to be encouraged by this, so definitely do that. So when we look at trauma, here are the 5 parts of the souls. Thank you guys for your hearts and your your likes. I appreciate that. That's encouraging for me to see that because it makes me feel like I'm giving you something that is beneficial to you. So I'm grateful to that. So there's 5 parts of the soul. Our soul is made up. So we are a physical body. So we have the physical body that we need to take care of, eating healthy, exercising, making sure we go to doctors so that we can stay healthy. That's our physical body. Because if we're not healthy physically, we're going to have a hard time serving God or doing the great things God wanted to do, or just even enjoy our own lives. And then we have our spirit man. Our spirit man is where the Spirit of God houses, is how our spirit man houses the Spirit of God. And so it's important that you go to church, you pray, you read your Bible, you building your relationship with God. That builds you up, builds your spirit man, your soul now. Your soul is very, 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 very important. And so our souls now, so one of the things that each part of our soul, so it's divided into 5 parts, and I'll tell you what they are in just a moment. So each part of our soul allows us to experience a portion of God's of God's divine nature. And so, because we don't have the capacity to take and receive all of God, we kind of have to get God in a little bite size. What we're able to, the more we delve deeper into our relationship with God, the more of God we receive that we can take in. But God created the soul and the 5 pieces of the souls to be sort of like portals that allow us to experience a dimension of God. And so, we want to make sure. So let's actually. So since each of these 5 parts, they are a portal, and allow us to experience God a little bit deeper. When what trauma does, the enemy uses trauma or sin to fracture these pieces of our souls. And when there's a fracture in our souls, in the parts of our souls, that begin to pervert or to twist the expression of God within us. So the enemy uses trauma, he uses sin to fracture the pieces of our souls. And when the pieces of our souls are fractured, we pervert the expression of God within us. So now let's get into the 5 pieces. So the 5 parts of the soul is your will, your mind, your heart or your emotions, your intellect, and your imagination. So let me write it down for you guys. The 5 pieces of the soul. Parts of the soul is your will, mind, heart, or you can say your emotions too. Your intellect and your imagination. Okay. So those are the 5 parts of your soul. So hopefully you guys have that. You guys can write it down on the 5 parts of the soul, because you got them in different platforms. So I want to make sure everybody that's watching the various platforms get it. So your will, mind, heart, or emotion, your intellect, and imagination. Hold on, I spelled emotion wrong. I forgot the O. Okay. Imagine. I put an extra E. Okay. All right. So you guys have the 5 parts of the soul. All right. So let's start with the will. All right. So your will, this is how trauma attacks your will. Okay. And this is the reason why trauma is so powerful, because all five parts of your will, it attacks each part differently. So with your will, trauma lies to us by hijacking our sense of control and safety in our will. It kind of put us in this sort of autopilot, and it begins to drive our life and our decisions. So when I was the promiscuity behavior that I was involved in, or the self-defeating behaviors, that they're designed to keep me a victim forever. Even though Christ has called me to be a victor, when the enemy allows trauma to come. So here's trauma. Trauma can be anything that I experience that negatively impact me. So when you think about the clinical definition of trauma, it is any situation that has negatively impacted me and stopped my functioning, in some form of my functioning. Okay, so we go through trauma all the time. Not every trauma causes damage to us. You know, so some trauma hit us so hard, it's like it sucker punch you, and it begins to affect the way you see, the way you think, the way you feel, the way you believe. It begins to shift the different parts of your life. So that's when trauma becomes an issue, because two people can go through a same scenario, and it's traumatic and affects us differently. You know, and so if you guys remember with the Apostle Paul, so in Romans chapter 7, the scripture was saying how Apostle Paul was saying, the thing that I wish to do, I don't do, but the thing that I don't wish to do, that's the thing that I do. So that is an example of the will, because we don't just do stuff in life just for the sake of doing them, but we will to do them. So it is our will that makes us get up and go to work. It is our will that makes us get up and, do a homework or clean the house. Our will. And so when the enemy uses trauma to hijack the will, it hijacks my control, my ability to control whether I get up or don't get up, or whether I do or I don't do. Haven't you guys have gone through experiences where you've done something and you're sitting there like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did this. How? Like, why did I do this? This is crazy. That's not even me. And you feel like, I can't believe I did this. Well, somehow you lost control of your will. And so the enemy is great in coming to hijack our mind, hijack our will, so we lose control. He can now take control. He slap us into some autopilot, and he's driving our life, and he's driving our decisions. And so we're constantly making stupid decisions that is constantly affecting us because we've lost control of our will. Okay. So and with your mind, what trauma does, now our mind is defined as a part of us that thinks, reasons, feels, understands, remembers. So what trauma comes to do is to pervert the way we think, the way we reason, the way our feelings, our understanding, our remembrance, and all of these are how God had intended us to be. And so the way we were meant to think in clarity and feel in clarity, so now everything people say, you feel some kind of way about it. Haven't you been sitting down and you've been minding your business, and then you look, because you're in a space, you're in some kind of place, some kind of mood, and somebody look at you and automatically you think they're talking about you. Or someone say something and this happens a lot on social media. People say something, they put a comment like, first of all, I don't care about these haters. Some craziness like that. And you sitting there like, who's she talking? Why is she talking about me? And fight happens on Facebook and social media all the time because somebody put a comment and somebody who is in their feelings, in their mind told them, oh, yeah, she's talking about you. Yeah, she's definitely talking about you. And you get into this back and forth with this person because your mind, your reasoning, your sense of feeling and mental capacity that has been perverted and trauma. And so the way thing and the interesting thing about trauma is a trauma could have happened to you 5 years ago. You're now 5 years away from that trauma because you never dealt with the roots of the issues that happened to you. You will still be dealing with issues in your mind that comes from that trauma. And you may not pick up at all on it that it's related to that trauma. But if it, and that's why it's important for you to sit with a therapist because we have the ability to kind of connect the dots for you. So you may be, when I was as a therapist, I'm sitting there and listening to clients, and they're sharing about different things that are going on with them. And as soon as they mention certain things, as God was like, oh, wait a minute. Remember, she said XYZ before. Now she's repeating this particular thing, connected for her. And so we have the ability to now connect your experiences that seem separate and on just like, well, it was just this incident. Like they don't seem like they're related, but they can be traced back to the trauma. A good example, my husband, hi Andrea, welcome. My husband had some pain in his leg a year or so ago. And we went to see a physiologist. And so he was saying to my husband that the pain is related to something in his back. And my husband was like, what? Why would the pain in my leg be related to that? That has nothing to do with one or the other. And so he was like, no. And I forgot all of what he said, but he was saying how the nerve that responds in this area of your leg, you trace that nerve all the way back. You can trace that nerve all the way to the back of your neck or your back or something or what it was. And so, and it was interesting, because my husband does electricity and other stuff too. So he understands that you can have a wire that's, you turn the switch on, but it's connected to something else. And so he understood right away. But what it is to say is that you can go through a particular trauma and it produce all of these negative impacts in your life. And while you may not be able to connect your current behavior with that trauma, a therapist is able to kind of help you with that. And so now, the thing in the mind, because trauma perverts our thinking and our reasoning, it hinders us from being able to experience the fullness of the expression of God that is accessible in us. So because the way we experience God is the way we express God. So if the enemy is successful in using our trauma in our mind to pervert, to use the trauma, if he perverts the experience, if he perverts the experience, then he also perverts the expression. And so that is important. Oh, it's 8:00 already. Okay. And we was doing the mind. So we'd have to finish this next week because I don't want to, not honor the time that we are going to share together. But so let's do a little recap then. So far, the things that we've talked about, we're going to have to do the heart, the intellect, and the the imagination next week, and that's fine to move into next week because I do want to respect the time that we have. But trauma, so there's 5 parts of our souls, and each of these 5 parts of our souls allow us to access a different dimension of God. And so the enemy's plan in our lives is to make us feel rejected, to use our sin against us and the traumas that happen to us. Some traumas that go down generational lines. That, in my bloodline, I wasn't the first one to be sexually violated. There were other people in my bloodline that this happened to, because we have a culture that says don't talk about these things. What ended up happening is that we close our mouth, we don't say nothing, and the trauma perpetuates. And no one is able to say, no, this can't continue going down the bloodline. I'm going to be the standard. So that's what God really calls us to do, to be the standard, so that the trauma doesn't keep flowing down generational curses, down the generational line. And so the enemy, because the enemy was rejected by God for sinning and trying to assert the authority of God, God rejected him. When men sin and against God, instead of rejected men, God created a redemption plan for men. And so the enemy is highly pissed that he is rejected, but yet we, men, who are we? There's a psalm, the psalmist says, who is man that you take notice of him? I mean, we made of dirt, and when we look at life, we do a whole lot of stupid stuff. And so the enemy is always looking to, in every negative experience, to thread in rejection. And the more he threads in rejection, all of a sudden, rejection now becomes a stronghold. And trauma is one of the ways that creates a portal into our soul. A portal into our soul. So now the enemy can now have access into the 5 parts of our soul: our will, our mind, our heart or emotion, intellect, and imagination. These 5 parts of our souls, if he can come in and create havoc in those parts, because those parts were designed specifically for us to be able to access a dimension of God. And so when he come in and he successfully shuts down any of these parts of our souls, he shuts down the dimension of God that we can access. And the less of God I'm accessing, the crazier my life is. And my choices, and I continue to fall in different sin, in different places, in different things that that was never intended to be. And so it's important for us to understand how he affects the parts of our souls, and for us to take it back and clean out these particular areas. So I appreciate you guys coming to watch tonight, coming to hear. Please send this out to someone, tag someone in this, invite them for next Monday as we go and finish the other part. I'll rehash again the will and the mind, and then we'll go into the heart, the intellect, and the imagination, and to see how trauma affects these parts of us. Please share this with someone, tag someone, bring them in to have a conversation. And if you were joining in late, go back and listen to the first part. I did share my testimony and the things that I've gone through and the traumas that I've experienced, and how God has, rescued me and continues to rescue me and continues to heal me, so that I can be able to come and share with you, so that you can be healed and continue in your healing, and you take that and share it with someone else, so that someone else can be healed. And then it goes on and like this. So do not despise your story. Do not despise the things that has gone into your life. God put you here as a blessing to others. and you just don't know how you can be a blessing to someone. You just never know what you can do. I've heard this story about this lady who was going to take her life. She was on her way home on a train, planning to take her life. And the lady that was sitting across from her just smiled at her and gave her a compliment. And that completely changed her life because she was like, I'm invisible. Nobody sees me. I don't matter. And one woman smiled at her, complimented her, and she felt seen for the first time. And she wasn't invisible. And it changed her whole outlook. It changed her plans to take her life. I shared earlier that, the night before I had planned on taking my life, God stepped in and rescued me. And so we cannot um, be ashamed of our stories because someone needs to hear it. And we are made stronger every time we share our stories as well. We defeat the enemy every time we share our stories. Because scripture says we overcome by the word of our testimony, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So every time I share my testimony, I overcome. A piece of my soul that was dying is resuscitated. Every time I share my story, it's resuscitated. Someone's life is resuscitated. Someone is encouraged. So encourage someone with this. God bless you guys. Please come back next week so we can finish um, the rest of the how trauma affects the parts of the soul. I'll do a recap again of the heart and the mind, and we'll do the rest of the three, which is your intellect, your heart, and your imagination. And those are very important pieces. We'll talk about them next time. Again, thank you guys. For those of you guys who have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe. It is Sandra Garcon Dejerville. Please subscribe. Please tell a friend to subscribe. We want to be able to share more. And also, oh, yep, I almost forgot. I have launched, let me pull it up really quick for you guys. So a lot of you guys know that I have been doing counseling. So I've been doing counseling for about 10 years and a little over 10 years. And so in the last few months, the Lord has really shifted my focus a little bit. And we are and have shifted into a coaching. So I have launched a coaching program. It is called Coaching Life with Sandra. And so let me just bring that down quickly, bring it up quickly. And so this program offers 3 tracks. Let me see if it's on there. Yep. The individual coaching, and that's for individuals who may be feeling stuck or in their lives and need strategic guidance and accountability to move into their next. Fivefold ministry coaching. So that is crafted for fivefold ministry officers, emerging or current ministry leaders to help them create a better balance with life and ministry, and executive coaching. And that's for business, community, and political leaders and other elites that are looking to scale their business and create a better well-managed life and work balance. So definitely go on the website, www.sandragarcondejerville. You're welcome to buy one of them for yourself or to someone else who needs it but can't afford it. Buy for a friend. So the individual coaching, the executive coaching, the ministry, fivefold ministry coaching is available. So we have the individual sessions, and then we also have the track. So that's a 12-week program for the ministry track. So definitely avail yourself if you're in need of these services. And so I have kind of postponed counseling for a little while, just so that I can focus a little bit more on this new venture that God has birthed in my spirit. And the more I'm working on it, the more I'm working with coaching clients now, the more I'm seeing like, oh my God, you know, all the experiences that I've had in the last 25 years as a social worker, therapist, business owner, community or ministry leader, all of that really has been forming and developing me to be able to coach people. So the coaching is not like therapy because we don't diagnose, we're not diagnosing, we're not treating any mental illness. And so sometimes there are people that need the support, but they don't want to be diagnosed with anything. You know, they don't need to spend all the time in what happened in their past and their traumas because they're maybe in a place where they're good, they've healed and they're good, but right now there's still some issues that are happening in their life that's making them feel stuck, and they need to get on with life and do different things. And so they need the coaching and they need the strategic planning and accountability, so that they can move to the next place in life. And so that's what this program, Coaching Life with Sandra, um, is about. And so I am very, very excited to offer Coaching Life with Sandra. So take avail yourself of it if you need it. If you know someone that might need it, please send um, the link out to them. Is www. I'll put it here for you guys. Um, www.sandragarsondegerville.com. And so avail yourself of these things. Let me see, Sandra. There we go. So I put that on there for you guys too. Um, that hopefully it will bless your life. All right. Well, again, I've taken about 13 minutes extra of your time. So let me close out, and I apologize for running a little bit later, but I will see you guys next week for the second part of how trauma affects your soul.